And in this panel, we're asking the question, the focus on the EPALE community. How could it support future developments in adult learning policy and practice? And I'm delighted to have on the panel with me Joyce Black from the Learning and Work Institute in the UK, Anni Kartinen from Finland, you are an EPALE ambassador and an entrepreneur, David Pollard from the Rehab Group in Ireland, and Dr. Marilyn Metzma from the Ministry of Defence of Estonia. So, first of all, let me just ask, we've just had a feedback from the working groups, which of course you participated in, but is there anything you particularly wanted to pick up on from the feedback from that working group, something that sparked off for you and said, that's a great idea? Yes?
Yeah, I was actually in group 4 myself. And,
hang on a minute, let's just check your mics are working, please. Yes, try again.
Okay, can you hear me?
No. Is it? Let's just check it's switched on at the side.
Of course, I can start yelling.
Yeah, it should be on. Yes, it should be on. Try again.
Okay, hello? Can you hear me?
Is that better?
Yeah. Some say yes, some say no.
I think your scarf is covered.
Do some striptease first.
I can hear the mic is live.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Can we get it closer to your mouth?
Maybe I have to hold the mic like this.
Try a handheld.
Okay. Let me just switch completely. Unstrap me.
Apologies, technology lets us down. The day when we get replaced by artificial intelligence is clearly a little way off.
Okay, so I was in group 4. We were discussing validation and guidance, and I have been working with adult education for years and years, actually, a couple of decades. And what the problem has been, because I've always been a policy enthusiast myself. I love reading policy papers and trying to figure out what they mean, but that's not the case with most practitioners. It's impossible to understand EU as a language. So that's why I think it was really a good idea that that all policies, I'm not only talking about adult learning policies, but why not all policies should be linked with individual stories. Like, how does this individual go through a certain process that this policy proposes? And what kind of effects has this policy had on this individual's lives? And that's how the message would actually go through to the practitioner level very well. And in this respect, I think EPALE could serve as a really, really great tool. Why not interview individuals who've gone through, let's say, validation process, or have benefited from lifelong guidance, or you know, upskilling programs, or whatever, and just highlight those policies through those individuals.
Okay, thank you. Joyce?
Yes. Am I switched on?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I was particularly...
Yeah.
Okay, so I was particularly struck by this credit card for adult learning. I've again spent a long time in adult learning, nearly 40 years, both as an adult educator and then latterly nearly 20 years working for a large NGO in the UK, particularly interested in lifelong learning. And we remember in the UK when we had individual learning counts and how bad they were. But as a policy organisation, we've also been struck by other European countries' idea of taking on personal learning accounts, which seem to have more resonance. And I was particularly struck because in the work group, in the group I was in this morning, there were a couple of countries, colleagues, who said there are issues because unless you are in work, you actually don't get any funding as an individual to do any kind of learning. You have to pay for it yourself. And I think, you know, if we're talking around participation and barriers, that must be a real barrier then. You know, given that, yes, it's fine if you've got a job, but if you don't have a job, how on earth do you find the funding to actually participate in adult learning? So maybe an idea of the credit card or a personal learning account, which would then take away that pressure of you trying to find that money, and that you knew it was there as an entitlement. You know, I think that is, you know, we know we feel safe because we have our European health card. I still have mine for however long. But the fact that I know if I'm sick, I'm okay, I'm covered. So it'd be really good if I knew as an individual, if I found some learning that I wanted to do, I could do it because I had my personal learning account or my credit card. And I think that's great.
Okay, thank you. David, do you want to add anything to this?
Can you hear me?
Oh yes, that works. Yeah.
Great. So one of the things that we came up with and we talked about in our group was entrepreneurship. And it's something that hadn't been touched on this morning, but we were chatting with some crew from the UK, some from Luxembourg, and we thought that we were talking about this flexibility of options and giving people options moving forward with their lives. And perhaps they've gone into maybe corporate environments and they're working their 9-to-5s, but perhaps it doesn't suit them. Maybe it did before, maybe it doesn't now, based on whatever it might be. Maybe it's family, maybe it's mental health. It could be anything like that. But I think if we can start to focus a little bit more on supporting people to get those skills in entrepreneurship, whether it's innovation or whatever it might be, and be able to enter a new area of work, I think that'll be something that we could do really well. It's probably an area that we need to work on better in Ireland, but it seems like it's something that probably haven't considered enough. And I just would be curious as to how maybe the EU could support that moving forward. I'm not too sure if I have the answer to it, but it was a topic that came up, and I think if anyone does have any good examples or best practice of this, it would be interesting to see how perhaps we could integrate that in Ireland and support people to have entrepreneurship as an option to move forward, because I think, I know we have an entrepreneur beside me here, and
very new one.
but having something like that, having your own business, for some people, that's the future and that's the way forward. So it was an interesting topic. Yeah.
Okay, which is leading me to ask the very explicit question, you know, how can the EU help support adult learning? Would you like to add in on this point?
Yes, I will check my microphone.
Yes,
it works.
I can hear.
Good afternoon from my side also. I would first explain what's my role in adult learning. Currently I work in the Ministry of Defense, but more importantly, my views and experiences are coming from a network we have in Estonia among public sector organizations. We have a network of training managers. It's almost a 20 years old network already. From ministries and agencies, people have come together actually for the same reason why we are here, because to share best practices and to actually talk to the people who have the same problems. So we have our small network ourselves. And what I see, and as I basically represent the employer's view in the civil service. I'm dealing with people who are already in the workforce. So the adults, in my definition, are maybe a bit different when we all in the general audience here. But what the EU can do, and based on the Estonian example, I can say that Estonia has benefited quite a great deal from social fund investments because there are central training programs which makes that for our civil servants that training is free from, basically it's free, but there's a bit more bureaucracy involved. And so on. But in my work group, we were discussing the financial aspects. And what I would like to say that actually this support is really important, because when we had crisis almost 10 years ago, what many of the organizations did, that they cut the training budgets, but we still had the European funds. So in that sense, we were able to be more sustainable, but another aspect is whether the EU funds are sustainable. So this is another big question.
Okay, so the EU funds were, if you like, a safety lifeline when national budgets or even organizational budgets for training got cut.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. When we look at the framework for adult learning in the different contexts that you're talking about, what improvements would you like to see? If you had a magic wand and you were granted 3 wishes, what would you like to see improve in your context? Because then the next question is, can the EU do anything about it? But let's start with what you'd like to see changing, and I'll come to you.
Right. I think, of course, I'm talking from the Finnish viewpoint now, and I'm talking about validation of non-formal and informal learning because that's my passion in life. It's really interesting that most countries that have functioning validation systems, they can quite easily validate informal learning, learning gained by, working or in some significant hobbies or whatever activities you have outside your, those activities that you do outside education, really. But then where the problem lies is the non-formal education. We have, practically the adult education, right? The non-formal liberal adult education. For example, in our country, far more than 1 million adults attend some sort of non-formal training each year.
4 million?
No, far more than 1 million.
Far more than 1 million?
Yes.
Just as how many?
We are 5 million.
Okay, so it's more than 20% of
Yes.
the population at any one
Yeah.
time, which is, I would say, quite significant already.
Yeah. And this is only like the sort of the kind of non-formal training that is being somehow calculated or, somehow recorded.
So
yes.
it's an underestimate
It
of
is
how much
it's a
is actually
massive
going.
underestimation, yes. And very often those skills and competencies gained through non-formal adult learning are really relevant for working life. And they're also relevant in case an adult person chooses to go to formal education and training. Oftentimes they are language studies, oftentimes they are IT studies, or or then it might be handicrafts or whatever. But it's really difficult to make that learning really visible, that you've gained in the non-formal sector. And this is something that I would like to, I know that we are not the only country that has that problem, that this kind of learning should be made more visible. And it seems that the recommendation of 2012 by the Council of Ministers that says that each country should have a system in place by 2018 that grants, in a way, access to adult population to have their competencies validated. Yeah, sure, it happens in some certain sectors, and then countries are really happy. Like Finland is really boasting its vocational education training system. Yeah, we have the greatest system ever. But we have these massive gaps that, learning that is really relevant is not actually made visible. And we don't still grant access to validation services for certain groups of citizens.
Just before you move off this topic, when we ask the audience, do we need a new agenda post-2020? And immediately, 99%, yes, absolutely. When I was talking to some of the people in the feedback from the workshops, they said one of the challenges of an EU-level document is because it's created by consensus, it gets negotiated to the point that countries that have quite well-functioning systems feel they've already done it, so the document adds nothing to it. And countries that are quite far from the gold standard feel like it's unachievable. But what you've just said is a country like Finland, where you've got 20% of your population and more active in some type of learning, and it's got a very well-functioning vocational educational system. There are still gaps that could be addressed and highlighted in EU-level documents. So nobody should rest on their laurels.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Joyce.
I've got sort of two sort of observations, and I'm sitting here thinking in an ideal world, March 19 won't be happening, so you have to bear with me on that. So from my perspective, you have to remember the UK is 4 devolved nations, and as one of the issues we have is that education policy is devolved as well, and that creates its own problems. But what we've been able to do with the EU National Coordinator role is, I have that role, and I've had that role since 2012, is that, and we've been delegated that role by UK government, which is basically in Westminster. But what it's meant is that I've been able to work with colleagues in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and in England, and in Scotland, and to be that independent broker, and to bring conversations together, to bring people together, round a table in those 4 nations, and to talk about our common challenges and our common issues, and also share common solutions as well. They may be administered at a national level in different countries, but we're absolutely all committed to what we want in terms of adult learning. So for us not to have a next sort of agenda would be really detrimental. And it would be really problematic, irrespective of what happens in March 19, because some of those other 4 nations are really closer to Europe than England, I would have to say that. But the other thing that's really helpful from an England perspective is we love data. And whether it's economic returns on investment or social returns on investment, we love that data. And the European Commission and all the various research centres give us that data. And it's absolutely essential, because it means I can, when we had our last working group meeting and we could look at the participation figures, and I could say, look what's happening. And yes, our ministry don't like it. So it means they have to do something about it, because they're highly competitive. And I like that, because it means it makes my job slightly easier to make the arguments. Not easy, but easier to make the arguments. So please, let's have something after 2020. It's really important, and it's really important for the UK.
Okay, thank you. Let me turn to David first. We've heard that, the EU level can shine a light on gaps in the system where a government may be sitting back and thinking they're doing very well. And it's useful because it produces comparison, benchmarks, and data, and creates, if you like, an agenda for discussion amongst colleagues in the UK. What's the added value you see in Ireland, and where would you like to see improvements?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, I suppose, just to give people a bit of a sense of my background as well. First time around in education wasn't so great. I was a builder then for 5 years, and I actually went back to as an adult learner and started working specifically in the area of education, and then moved into innovation management for a company called the Rehab Group. And what that focuses on, there's a learning stream within that focuses on flexible supports for people with various needs, which could be unemployment, disabilities, mental health, whatever it might be, and the supports there. But for myself, the access to be able to go back and to study again was fantastic, because I was a different learner when I went back the second time around. And for people with disabilities as well, the focus there is the accessibility. Is a lot of, not just for people with disabilities, but if anyone's been to Ireland, you'll know what it's like. We've got little tiny islands around our own island. And I live in the centre, and I'm only 3 hours from everywhere. But at the same time, there's lots of remote areas that don't have access, whether it's a lack of Wi-Fi or whatever else it might be. And I think, although there are some great initiatives going on, and the supports are there, there's a digital need there as well, an accessible digital need for people to be able to go online and to be able to study in their own way. for example, again, going back to families, if you've got a kid as a dad or a mum, you need that extra flexibility there to go online and study, whether it be part-time or not, if you have a disability as well. The idea of creating accessible online environments for you to learn and study and to progress in, I think is a key area, and probably something we haven't nailed down well. Probably need a little bit more support there, just to understand what exactly universal design means, universal design in learning, but even creating the simple, basic thing of having your website accessible for someone who is blind, and for them to be able to do it. So there's lots of different things. Creating simple language is another area that I think actually there's a lot of work being done there, which is great and it's good to see. But just a little bit of accessibility will go a long way in supporting people outside of the kind of core group and probably don't have access to this learning that we see and we take maybe, or some people take for granted. And I think there's a mental health aspect to this as well, because at the moment there's some reports that just come in that shows Ireland, in terms of chronic depression, is right at the top or the bottom, depending on how you look at it. And perhaps with a bit of support around accessibility, the opportunities that come with that learning, that you can go on and do what you want with your own life, I think that hopefully would then have a positive impact on what aren't great figures at the moment.
Okay, so you see the technology and the internet-based accessibility as a key inclusivity driver. Let me go back to the comments that we've had earlier in the morning, that lifelong learning isn't just about getting people back into the workforce. It needs to cover all aspects of life, and we are an aging population. And one of the concerns about technology-driven learning is that for the older population, that can be a barrier. How do you think about that aspect? That yes, great, it's online, and yes, we've got broadband in rural areas, but what happens for older people, often isolated, lonely older people? Is technology able to bring them in?
It's a challenge for sure. I think there's the literacy aspect of that. That's a huge challenge. And I think that's where we need to be flexible in terms of our own organisation and the options that we're providing. So online is fantastic, but of course it's not the answer to everything, and sometimes there needs to be those outreach programs where you're going out and you're making yourself accessible as an organisation to those people as well, not just providing a tool for them to get access. So it's a two-way thing there, and I think there's a really interesting area in terms of the online usage of digital tools and whatever else it might be, is something that we don't touch on too much, but it's digital citizenship, which means it's not just the use of the tool and the competencies and the skills, but it's actually how you're interacting and behaving as a citizen online. And it'd be interesting just to get a show of hands who's tweeted out during this event so far. Could I get a hands up? Okay, so there's a few people who are doing that, but we've seen them, and I've met some people who have come up and said, oh, I've seen what you've tweeted, or vice versa. And I've noticed that I've already created some sense of them in my mind. And for people who are now digital citizens in this world, we probably don't teach them enough what the impact of their digital footprint is going to be when they go on into employment, or if they're in their lives. So if I tweet out right now something that isn't too appropriate, I know I won't have a job when I go back to Ireland. And that's another area. So it's broad, but going back to the point, I think we do need to be flexible in our organisation, so that not only are we providing accessible digital options, but we're also providing those social options as well, so that we're actually reaching out to them.
So we're creating a wide range of provision of services. It's not enough to just create something online.
I don't think so. I don't think it's
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all so different. I think it needs to be like that.
Thank you. Joyce, you wanted to come in on that?
Yeah, so it was quite interesting because I don't know if you sort of follow the news, but this morning my own Prime Minister actually issued a loneliness strategy initiative to guard against loneliness. And for the first time, adult learning got a mention on the basis of she's actually advocating social prescribing, for health and well-being. So absolutely GPs, general practitioners, doctors prescribing art classes, dance classes to guard against loneliness. And for me, I'm kind of thinking, wow, the penny's dropped. But I'm just kind of thinking, well, she's up for election next year. But, cynicism aside, the fact that it's, the evidence is there and somebody's actually put the evidence under her nose to actually saying that it's an issue, it's a social issue. And being online, whilst it's useful if you've got family, and you can keep in touch with family using digital technology, Facebook, whatever. But if you don't have anybody and nobody comes to see you and you haven't spoken to anybody for 4 weeks, then what happens? Being online won't help. So the fact that, the Department of Health are getting involved now and getting involved in social prescribing, for me, is a big step forward. And I think we need... I feel as if I could be pushing against an open door when I go home now. And I kind of brought this along. This is not sort of publicity, but we did something as part of the national coordinator work, which was around the UK, and it was the impact of adult learning on health, on work and communities. And part of this was about, how social prescribing works, how, it benefits communities and so on. And it wasn't just our sort of research, it was European research as well. So, digital is important, but I think adult learning absolutely has a place, and social prescribing, not going to a vocational course, but an adult education course, can also be a benefit.
Thank you. Marilyn, you wanted to come in.
I wanted to share also my view on what kind of improvements I wish to see, and maybe it's not so much directed to EU, but maybe for the training managers themselves, as I wish that I would have resources or knowledge how to really pinpoint the problems and target with and to offer the training this workforce actually needs. In order, so basically, I see that sort of tailor-made training programs are something really valuable, and in the end, it's more easier to see the outcomes and in the long run to show that it's not in the last priority, it's not last in the priority list, training and development programs themselves. So in a nutshell, tailor-made programs and actually targeting the problem itself.
Okay, thank you. Let me open the floor up at this point. If anyone wants to come in, you're welcome to answer the question I posed to the panel, which is, if you had a magic wand, what improvements would you like to see at the national or local level in adult learning? And then, of course, the second part is, what can the EU do to help that happen? Can I see if anyone has a suggestion? I have a magic wand. We could grant your wishes. What would you like to see? Nobody has a request? Yes, we have a... Let's get the mic over there, please.
Yes, Olivier Toche from France. I wanted just to follow up on the question raised about the credit card thing earlier on. I wanted to mention that in France there is a new legislation that has been passed this past August, and which is titled, the law is titled, The Freedom to Choose One's Own Professional Future. And it's based on there are many things in the law, but two basic things are important here to mention. One is there will be a personal individual training account, and there will be a national platform, and the account will be financed by money coming from the enterprise, which are now mutualized, but will be channeled to this platform, 500 euros per year until 5,000, and it's even 8,000 for people with less qualification. And on this platform, individuals will be able to choose their training adults will be able to choose their training among a catalogue. So it's not like the credit card, but a bit like it. And what do we expect from the EU is probably, on top of that, probably to put more money, bonuses on sectors that are identified as priorities, or probably guarantee loans for individuals to finance their own trainings, on top of money that could also be given by the enterprise if there is a collective agreement within the enterprise. And we hope this tool will be a powerful tool for three things: to give the individuals more responsibility to choose their own training, a powerful tool to reorganize the training sector, because they will have to be certified in order to be on the catalogue, and if there is EU money, more visibility to what EU can do for adult learning. So that's a big challenge, of course.
Okay, well, I did open you up by saying I had a magic wand, so feel free to put forward a big challenge. Any other input people would like to make while I'm in the granting of wishes frame of mind? I've got the feeling we're in the post-lunch slump. So everyone, let's stand up and energize for a moment. Everyone, stand up, please. Stand up. Panel as well, please. Come on, stand up. Okay, let's see your hands. Hands. Okay, we're going to try something from Qigong, which is we're just going to energize down the side of the body. So we start up here, down the arm. Other side. Good, right, now down the legs. Other side. Sorry, you've got your hands full. Shake your arms again. And now we're going to turn around once. Okay. Do we feel a little bit more awake? Things have moved? Okay, good. Sit down. Okay. So, that was your public health intervention of the afternoon. Let me now, we were in the phase of granting wishes, and we had something specific from France. Let's focus in a little bit now, perhaps, on the EPALE platform itself. We heard in the morning how it's become a vibrant community. We have tens of thousands of people active on it across Europe. It's used a lot to share project ideas, and we know of several projects that have been birthed from the EPALE platform because people first met each other through it. But how could we use it more effectively in the next phase? What could we do to turn it into an even stronger catalyst for change? Anyone from the panel who'd like to kick us off? Yes, Anna.
Thanks. Well, as I said previously, that I've always been a bit of a policy enthusiast, but I really believe that EPALE has the potential of really being the tool to sort of steer policies. And I was really happy when EPALE published the policy tool. But then I think that is one issue that should really be developed further, so that, for example, we could connect national policies to the relevant EU policies that steer adult learning, because then it would be easier for our practitioners in our respective countries to actually see how does the EU policy and our national policy, how do they if they have a dialogue, if they are a matching pair, and then of course, as I said earlier on, these policies could be enhanced with stories of individuals. So I think that would be because I really feel sad about the fact that the EU is doing a great job with policy work, honestly. And that the practitioners do not understand what is meant.
Okay.
that makes me feel sad. Yeah.
So more stories and more interaction.
Yeah, and connecting the national policies to EU policies, so that would create more visibility to the entire picture.
Excellent. Joyce.
Okay, ever the sort of pragmatist. EPALE did its own evaluation, and it was very comprehensive. So I think whilst we've got lots of ideas, that evaluation came from consultation with the sector. And I think the sector took its time to respond to that consultation, and I think that it would be disingenuous of us not to respond to that evaluation. I think there were some really key messages in there that I think we need to respond to, and we need to be seen to be responding to so that people can see a difference. So, for example, on the landing page now, we do have that policy area, and it is really good. So I think that's really good. We'd like the rest of it to be the same. I also think another evaluation that took place over the summer, which was the evaluation of Erasmus. And one of the key aspects of that evaluation, which said that adult learning is fragmented. Well, tell us something we don't know. You know, it is fragmented because adults are messy learners, and it's one of the, one of the sectors which is the least organised, and as such, it doesn't respond well to having formal structures imposed, and often it's very difficult to collect evidence. So I think EPALE has, I can give it a mandate, which is the next evaluation we have on Erasmus. Let's make the adult learning bit better, because EPALE is doing a better job, given that it's the adult learning platform across Europe. So I think that's what I would like to see, so that we can see some real concrete evidence from the platform, which means that the sector is better represented and the evidence is better collected, coordinated, and then reported on.
Okay, thank you. How do any of you use EPALE in your day-to-day work? Do you consult it every week, every month, every day? What's your experience of using EPALE?
As an ambassador, I have to say I use it all of the time. That's
Okay.
just as simple as that.
I think you'd have to say that, wouldn't you, David?
Exactly. But for me, what I like a bit of digital. I like social media in its place, and if it's used correctly, I think it's very powerful. And just looking at the statistics there in terms of comments and things like that, I think they're good, but I think we can improve that. I think we can, quite reasonably improve that. And from a technical point of view, obviously, we need to maybe speed it up a little bit and make it a little bit more accessible, even for our colleagues who have different disabilities, things like that. But for me, I think what we need to be continuing to do is to celebrate what is already happening. So the platform is wonderful, but I do think we need to really try and encourage people to share what is going on 12 months of the year. Whether that's events, whether that's successes of our learners, whatever it is. I think that's the kind of the key to this. It's what will draw people into the website and the platform, is that sharing. Because I think as an educator, I want to be inspired. I want to feel like, okay, I'm feeling a bit down today. I'm going to go on. I'm going to see something that's happening over in wherever it might be, Bosnia, Serbia, wherever, and that's going to really encourage me, and I can bring something back to my classroom or back to my centre, and I can actually try and implement something like that and make it happen. So it's that idea of showing best practice, showing this. But I feel like we do need to work on that a little bit. There's a bit of an area there to do, but I think the groundwork has been done. And then with that inspiration as well, we also need support. I think that's what we need as well, going back to mental health. As educators, as people working in this area, there is a drain. In the area of disabilities, there's a thing called compassion fatigue, and it's when you're looking after people and you're working with people, even if it's in residential or whatever it might be, there is that drain and that mental health issue there as well. And I think EPALE could potentially be something there that supports educators and supports people working in this area, not only to do the best job that they can do, but also to look after themselves in the best way possible too.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask the audience, can I see hands up if you are a regular EPALE user? And I mean regular means You know, more than once a month?
All the ambassadors.
Okay. If you use it, who uses it every week? Every week. Who uses it every day? Okay, you are my super users, and I'm going to come to you. Who's the person with my mic? Okay, you've got your hand up. You're a super user. You use it every day. Let's find out, why do you go to it? What do you get every day? Which bit do you go to? The microphone is coming to you.
Firstly, because of my job, I am responsible for the national coordinators in Turkey, and we share our ideas or information about the project with Brussels. And also there are a lot of different and enjoyable or useful events in EPALE. I can see and choose one of them, and I can attend. Also, I attended an event from EPALE last year. It was so useful for me in Ireland. So I suggest you to look EPALE every day and search events. Okay. Sometimes I put articles or news on EPALE.
Okay.
That's my reason.
So you're the national coordinator from Turkey. Where are your Turkish colleagues?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
The national coordinator uses it every day. How about the rest of you? Do you go on as often as she does? Is EPALE how you get the first information from her?
They use EPALE too.
Yes, but every day as much as you?
I don't think so. I am the superhero, the only one.
You're the a round of applause for superheroes. Okay. Who else is a super user, uses it every day, who can tell us what they use it for and how it makes their day better? Do you start the day with EPALE? Is it what you sit down to enjoy with a cup of coffee?
I can say something. Okay, thank you. Italbert from Portugal. I use EPALE because now I have time. Now I have time. That's really. And why I'm choosing EPALE? Because I'm waiting for a new development, a new platform. Really, I'm not happy with our platform. And I say it every day that I go there. Why?
Okay.
Because we say 3 or 4 keywords. Collaboration. So we must improve collaboration. EPALE must be our platform for collaboration, and it isn't.
Okay.
Cooperation, same thing, and it isn't. Like a social network, where I can find EPALE as a social network. You here are using a tool for our question, and we can use EPALE. Why not? Why are not we using EPALE? Why not? So, for the next year, the challenge really is to make EPALE the platform, the unique platform for adult education, but in a digital way.
Okay.
No. Yes. I'm like like a dinosaur, but still having in mind that digital is the next challenge for all of us in Europe. It's the only way to challenge America and Asia. So EPALE must be our premium.
Okay.
Now,
thank you.
The last word.
Okay.
Offer. What EPALE is offering as learning? What? Where are some courses? None. Where are some hypotheses for us to learn in EPALE? Just when we are sharing with our moderators. That, when I put some post in for our moderator, I take at least half an hour to return and come back for the next question. You didn't have this one. So we must be true. You are here to hear us and say what is really true in Nepal. So, last chance. We must have the best platform in all the world and not in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that bold vision and request, and I do know that we will have a chance to hear more about how the EPALE tool will be developed tomorrow. That's where we're going to focus on. But your point is taken. If it had the functionality and the speed, you would be able to use it more. Excellent. Who else is a regular user and can tell us how it makes your day better? What you use it for? Anyone who is someone who only uses it once a month? Okay. Tell us, if you're only going once a month, what are you looking for?
When I'm looking, I do post on it because I am an ambassador.
Right.
But I look for my own work, I look for research and I look for evidence on it.
Okay.
And I look for toolkits and examples of practice. And I have to say, what always strikes me when I look at it, because I am very evangelical about it, is that I'm working with young people and adults and educating people to become teachers in adult ed. And EPALE is off-putting. It is too textual, it is jargon, and it is not dynamic like I think it should be. And I agree with your points. And also video. I look, and it's not just young people, it's everybody now with Instagram, Pinterest, video, YouTube. But the technical speed has to catch up, because for our visual learners, and most of the adult learners I work with, we work through visuals, infographics, video, discussion, if we can't have them in the room. Okay. So to have even linked into other technology behind EPALE that's concealed, but something even in the short term that has video dynamic content where I can say to my learners, you can upload something yourself into this section of EPALE about your journey. That's what I want.
So this aspect of increasing, I mean, you talked about testimonies and stories from learners, that the ability to upload simple videos and use visuals would be a great added.
I even think for ourselves on the platform, for me, I know that in work, and you're saying about finding the time, and I do appreciate that, but something like podcasts, where we can, as we work, turn it on and listen to ourselves as experts and other people in the different areas, it would be quite useful. And definitely there are things to work on. I agree 100%. I think everyone here is aware of that. And I think that's why I'm looking forward to tomorrow to be able to see that. But I do feel like it would be useful as well to take that and actually put it into some practical usage. So if there are people who are willing to start their podcasts or start sharing their classes or start sharing this stuff, that's what we need to do. We need to create a need. So we can talk about it, which is fine, but we need to actually show people that we really want to do this. We need to create that, have that content ready to go, so that when it is, that we have it and that it will take flight from there.
Let me just ask you, I appreciate that it may not be all that accessible or user-friendly for your adult learners, but when you're going to look for evidence and best practice from other countries, do you find that?
I do.
Okay, so it's meeting that need, even if it isn't meeting all of the needs. Is that something you would agree with here on the panel?
Yes, I would say we were an early adopter of EPALE, right? We were waiting for it, and I think it's probably because our colleagues from ECORUS are on our UK reference group for the national coordinator work. So we've used it, we've set up our own communities of practice across the UK. So again, it's about thinking about being fit for purpose. So we've actually set up closed community groups, which work really well for discussions and uploading documents. Obviously, we've taken part in webinars from colleagues at EBSN and EAA, and we've done our own webinars. So I think it's, I take the point about keeping up with technology, but technology is moving too quickly, and we have a platform that, irrespective of its functionality, can still work for us. I just think, it won't do everything that we want it to do. No single platform will do that. But it's about making the best use of what it can do. And what it can do is you can bring communities together. If you think about, 250 people in a room, EPALE community. So instead of meeting virtually, we're now meeting in person, which is a really good thing. That's a testament that it's actually working on some level. But no, we use it across the UK. And we worked in collaboration with EPALE UK last year to actually do our National Coordinator Conference, 2-day conference. They did all the comms, we did the campaigning, we did some filming, it went up, and we had a lot of really good exposure. And for us, we could not have done that without EPALE UK. So it actually works if you've got to work a bit hard for it, but it works, and it's, for me, it's really positive.
We'll get you the mic. While the microphone is coming, can I just again see who in this room is part of a community of practice on EPALE? Okay, so that seems to be an activity. I'd be interested in hearing more about that. Yes.
Thanks very much. Brian Call from Northern Ireland. Just wanted to develop a little bit on the good use of EPALE. We've been involved in a community of practice for the last couple of years, and what's happened is it's evolved into what's called a collaborative space with 4 partners from Greece, Italy, Turkey, and Scotland. We just received funding, which we're now developing privately and confidentially in the collaborative space. But the beautiful thing about it is that we're hoping that 2 years down the line, we will actually have developed and evaluated an accredited course with a qualification on cultural awareness and diversity. The trainees can actually take part in it interactively on the platform. And EPALE will continue to have a very central role in that, providing that platform space. So basically, this would not have happened without EPALE. And the discovery of the partnerships happened through, first of all, the community of practice. Then we got very good help from the facilitators in the NSS in UK to open up a collaborative private space to take it to a further level. So hopefully that gives a little bit of encouragement about the end result can be really positive, and we're hoping 2 years down the line, you'll all be able to enjoy it. So thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Who else wants to share your experiences in a community of practice or a private collaborative space? How is that working for you? Yes. And we'll come to you in a minute. Yes, we'll start over here. Put your hand up again so we can see where to bring you the mic.
So I work at the university as a researcher and as a lecturer. So first I will share my...
You said your university, which country?
Lithuania.
Lithuania, thank you.
So as a researcher, I'm a part, I participate in the community of practice, and according to my research, we have developed a project and received funding in Erasmus+, so this is my very good experience. But I would like to share my experience as a lecturer, because, I teach students who are future adult educators. In Lithuania, we call them andragogs. And I use EPALE as open educational resources. And I think it's a very good practical example because I give my students a possibility to work directly with EPALE. So I ask them to find some materials, some articles, some documents, laws, and so on and so forth to comment on them directly on the platform. So I give them home assignments, and they are actually very eager to do them online because, paperwork is like traditional papers. They are absolutely bored about them. So working directly on the platform makes them really happy. They say, okay, of course, teacher, we will create our accounts and we will publish our opinion. We will create blogs, we will discuss, we will share our ideas directly on platform. And well, I, as a teacher, I just can check their home assignments, yeah, how effective they are. And of course, it again makes our platform more popular among adult educators, future adult educators, and other stakeholders in Lithuania, and I think in all Europe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's over there. So you're using it to train the next generation of adult educators. Yes. There's someone here, and then we'll come to you. Yes. And then we'll
Sorry,
come
there was other person, but I was like just to continue what colleagues from Lithuania said. I am from Latvia.
Yes.
We use wider a bit, not only for adult educators, but we use for students, teachers, to teach them to work, to discuss, to guide the discussion in a virtual environment, because also it's also one task that we organize or develop discussion skills in the classroom or out, but also we have to give them a lesson how to work virtually. And so students go and visit EPALE once a week, and they work very regularly and express their views, and they are very happy because they know what other people think, yes, about their views. They can compare, and I think we develop not only discussion skills, but we develop also critical thinking skills as well, and it's very good. And then we discuss in the classroom, in the lectures, what new ideas did they learn in this EPALE, and when they finish their course, the best students have the right to put their materials in sources. We discussed that it was very nice, his work, and we allow them just or recommend that it would be nice that other people read. And of course, it's also a lesson for us, for teachers, yes, to follow them, because all the time we have to be alert what they are writing, how do they express, do they progress or not, because it's not enough to say I agree or disagree. So practically we use also not only for these practical skills, but we also use for scientific purposes, because they can count even or organize different activities on EPALE, and they are really satisfied. We say thanks, and as always there will be, as we say, if we had the possibility today to do the SWOT analysis of EPALE, then we would say that there are certain pluses, certain minuses, certain challenges, and certain threats. And these threats there will be always, but as we are speaking, when we are speaking about house, it never will be completely ready. We will build and go on, yes, and we are happy that we have such EPALE, and also that we have very nice coordinators in our country. Thank you.
It's over there. So I'm hearing that the Baltic states are really quite active and using the EPALE to train their next generation of educators. Yes?
Yes, I am Roseline. I come from France, in the University of South Brittany. And I'm using EPALE for different reasons. The first one, I animate a group about project management, an European project on the EPALE platform. And my comment is, okay, we have a group, but we speak in French, and we write in French. And I think it is a problem, because just to give a number, I take the example of Croatia. There are maybe around 1,000 users, and in France we are 1,800 users. At the level of the country, it's totally different, and of course Croatia is better than France if we take this level of understanding. So we have a big effort to do that, and we have a big effort to share more and in different languages. I take my example. I have there are a few days ago, I have shared a lot of vocabulary in the glossary in French and in English, but we need someone to continue to share the vocabulary in other languages to grow up this tool, because it is an excellent tool. So we have the chance to have this tool, EPALE. It's an excellent tool. I totally agree with the man who said, yes, thank you, EPALE, but we have a big effort to continue. And a second example for me, I am teacher in a master degree, and I prepare the students for the European community to work with the European project. And they come on EPALE group to learn more and to discover other partners, for example. And I think it's a good opportunity to prepare early students, for example, to use this sort of tool, and to early prepare people to have this sort of it is a specific philosophy to work in a community of practices. There is a lot of uses, there is a lot of competencies to do that. You can take an information, but you have to give information to share something. So it is a really good tool. I have one personal comment, a little bit slow, and sometimes it's quite difficult to work with EPALE, and we have to say that because we have to change that, please. And but I have the same comment. It's an excellent tool to share information at the European level.
Okay, thank you. So we take the point that there are some really good elements inside EPALE, and we've heard use case examples from different countries, the added value it provides, not just the content, you get the evidence you're looking for, but it is also a learning tool for some of the students you're working with to help them with their own competencies, but issues of speed and additional features, etc. Let me now turn to the panel and ask you to come up with some closing messages that you'd like to give, either about the future of the adult learning sector and the direction it's going in, or how the EPALE tool could better meet some of your needs. Joyce.
Okay, I'll start from the adult learning perspective and the European sort of influence. Adult learners are still the biggest demographic across Europe, and I think that whilst we have the very welcome social pillar, where lifelong learning is there as the first principle, all I'm seeing at the moment coming out of Europe around the European area of education is for young people. And I think I would like the European Commission, or the messages that are coming out, should be not just about lifelong learning is around formal education and it's at university, but there should be something stated quite explicitly about adult learning.
Okay, thank you.
Right, today when we started today with the poll, there was a pretty big consensus that there is lack of political will, and that was already addressed by Dana, but I think people, well, this is my interpretation, because I was sort of on the verge of voting that same way, and I definitely would not have meant the Commission's political will, but our country's political will. And that is something that sometimes I feel helpless in front of, because it seems to me that sometimes it's easier to actually influence the European Commission and their policy making than the national policy making. And that is something that is quite surprising. That just occurred to me now. And I'm still sort of wondering, like, how is it possible? But it actually is. The Commission is actually listening to the stakeholders with really big ears. And this is something that it seems to me that sometimes countries, member states, they write piece of papers, they say, okay, we're committed, but then the actual implementation is really badly lacking. And it's not necessarily because of lack of money, but it is really the lack of political will sometimes. And this is something that I would like to bring on the agenda more, that how can we improve the implementation.
Thank you. David, last thoughts?
My mind works. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, again, it's going back to accessibility. I think that needs to be on the agenda for sure. Working in the area with people with disabilities in adult education, I see a need there as we move forward towards a gig economy where, you know, work is going to be over short contracts, and, you know, a lot of it will be based online, and people will be working remotely and from different areas. And I think we even have to start thinking a little bit bigger than just Europe, because we'll start to become employees in a worldwide workforce because of the online and digital tools that we have access to. But I think within that, I do think we need to look at the fact that a range of abilities is the most ordinary thing in the world. And I do think we need to, when we're designing and developing things and creating policies, we do need to consider everybody within that and make sure that we are designing everything from scratch to include everybody. And I think that if we move along from the inclusion side, accessibility, inclusion, diversity is fantastic, but I think that will provide a sense of belonging for our learners, both within our educational society, but also in work and moving beyond that as well in their lives. So that's where I'd focus on.
Thank you. Marilyn.
Yeah, I think in the end I have to explain why I'm titled Dr. Metsma in the program. I'm not a medical doctor, but I just, there's a connection actually. I've defended my PhD on a topic of coordination of civil service training systems. And I think that one of the findings actually applies to EPALE also. It's that for a coordination, there are different power sources. For example, technical, human, and financial resources paired with knowledge, commitment, and leadership. And I think that it's the same applies to EPALE, that we need all of these. We need this technical platform. Yes, there are some room for improvement, but we also have to have engaged people in this community. And this is my final thoughts. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And can we say thank you to our panel members?